Hello, my name is Steve Gerhardt. This is the Unagi Observer. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming here. Always appreciate it. Today we're going to talk quickly about a couple things. I want to do an Ultraman review, the Netflix Ultraman. I want to talk just a little bit about Cowboy BeBop, also on Netflix. So let's just go ahead and start with Ultraman. So Ultraman came out in Japan in the late 60s, 1960s. So it's an old show. It's an old tokusatsu show. Tokusatsu shows are basically those shows that are kind of like the original Godzilla movie, where it's a guy in a monster suit and another guy in a robot suit who's the good guy, and they battle it out in a set that is basically a whole bunch of miniatures, like miniature tanks, miniature buildings, the whole 9 yards. And the basis of Ultraman is the plot of it is that one of the members of the SSP, which was a government science project kind of thing, was flying an experimental jet plane, and Ultraman had come in from outer space and they collided. Now Ultraman, the guy who came from space, felt bad about killing the pilot, and so he brought the pilot back to life, kind of, and so that whenever villains from outer space, from this that are trying to take over the Earth, these giant kaiju from space, then the guy who was resurrected would do a stance or say something, and he would turn into Ultraman, which turns into this gigantic robot. So the series is basically about fighting off this invasion. At the end of it, where Ultraman is successful, he decides to leave Earth. And when he leaves Earth, he unfortunately wipes out the memory of the guy that he melded with. So while the guy kind of understands or remembers Ultraman kind of in context, he doesn't remember being Ultraman. So that's important. So now Netflix has done an anime series, Ultraman. And the best part about this series is that it's not a reboot. It is actually a continuation of the original tokusatsu series, which is really good. You don't get that often. So it's not a reboot. And it goes back to the pilot. It starts with the pilot being an old man now, who has a really young son. And you come to find out that both the man and the son are a little bit more invulnerable than most human beings, a little bit stronger than most human beings, a little bit faster than most human beings. And they call it the Ultraman effect because he was once Ultraman, and they probably figured that he passed the genes on to his son. So then it actually fast forwards a few years later, and the father realizes that he was Ultraman. Like he finally remembers being Ultraman. And one of his old allies in the SSP is now at head of the SSP, who has been monitoring him and also what's been going on in space. And the rest of the series is basically the same as the original series, which is it's an invasion from space, a bunch of different aliens coming down and fighting Ultraman. Ultraman's defending planet Earth. Here's where the story gets a little bit different. So, in the original series, kaiju, huge monsters, bigger than buildings, stomps on tanks. Ultraman, just as big as the monsters, and able to do like ray beams, and he has these poses where he goes like this, and this like huge beam comes out and destroys the monster and stuff like that. But they're big, right? Well, in the anime series, they're more human size. So, there's no more big kaiju. There's no more big Ultraman. Everyone's normal sized. And then it kind of gets, well, this is kind of the part where I'm kind of like, but it still works, where that there are aliens that come to Earth secretly, and the SSP is one of the organizations that oversees this. Yeah, I know. Sounds like Men in Black, right? Yeah. That's why I'm like, okay, kind of stealing a little bit. But it still works. The plot still works. He uses these aliens, the new Ultraman uses these aliens to help him, defeat the new alien invasion that's coming to Earth. Now, the new Ultraman is, of course, the son of the original Ultraman, but he's got a little bit of problems. He doesn't quite know how to control his powers. He's really new to it. He's new to the armor that he's given. He's new to everything, so he kind of bumbles his way through a lot of this series. It's about 13 episodes of this one high school kid bumbling his way through superpowered fights. And I don't want to give anything else away, but there's a bunch of other characters that come in. The SSP comes back, and yada yada yada. It's a good storyline. It's a really good storyline. I really enjoy it. The glaring thing about this series, unfortunately, is the animation. It's completely computer generated. It's 3D computer generated. So what you're really watching is what amounts to, in my mind, an anime series that looks like a video game series of cutscenes. So if you can get past that kind of animation, where it's kind of stilted and like there's no fine articulation, you know, the hands are always like this, and whenever they're clapping somebody on the back, they don't actually look like they're touching. If you can get past that, which I could kinda, then this is a really enjoyable series. Now, obviously, Netflix is kind of cashing in on this nostalgia factor. So if you were a fan of Tokusatsu Ultraman, if this is something that you liked, or if you're old enough to remember that, you're gonna like what they did with this series. You're gonna like it. Even though Ultraman is not a humongous robot fighting a huge kaiju, it's still good. It still has that fun but seriousness to it, and the action scenes are pretty good. And that's where the kind of CGI or the computer generation kind of shines a little bit, even though there's a couple times where it kind of gets a little jerky. But for the most part, would I tell you to watch this series? I think you should. I think you'll like it. I think it's not something, you don't have to watch the original series to understand it. So if you never saw the original 1967 version, don't worry about it. You'll get enough information in the series to tell you what you need to know. So yeah, you know what, Netflix kind of, except for the animation, I think they got this one right. So I'm only going to talk a little bit about Cowboy Bebop on Netflix because I want to be able to really talk about it once I get a little bit more information. As you know, they have casted most of the main characters, including Vicious, the villain, one of the main villains of the series. And but they haven't gotten Edward yet, and I'm really curious to see who they're going to cast for that. That's an important character to me. It's a character I've always liked. Who doesn't like Cowboy Bebop? So, of course, what I'm going to air right now are just a few of my concerns. As you know, the main cast, a lot of the casting has been done for the main characters, the crew of the Bebop. And the two big ones are, of course, Spike and Jet. Spike is going to be played by John Cho, which I'm a little bit nervous about. John Cho has acting chops. He can act and he can do things, but it's just one of those things where I feel that he might be too typecasted. He did a really good job in some of the other movies that he's been in, science fiction movies that he's been in, but this is a totally different level of character that I think that he has not done before. So a little bit nervous about that. There is, for Jet, is going to be played by Mustafa Shakir. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he was one of the villains in Luke Cage, who I really liked, and I thought he was really good in Luke Cage. I'm looking forward to seeing him play Jet. I think it's different enough, but still the same enough, still gritty enough that I think he might be a good fit. I think it might work. I just don't know. I just don't know. The other unknown is the fact that it's Netflix doing this. Netflix does not have a great track record with doing versions of popular shows, books, anime, things like that. While they have some winners and some that are decent, they've got some bombs too. And if you watch his talent channel, you know exactly what I'm going to mention. That's right, Death Note. Netflix's Death Note. Horrible. Hate it. Just so bad. And that's my fear, is that they're going to do something like that to Cowboy Bebop, which I really hope they don't do it. So we'll see what Netflix has to do. One of the things that a lot of people are bringing up, which is true, is that Cowboy Bebop the anime is an anthology series, which means that there's a lot of little stories through the main story arc. So while you have this big story arc from the beginning to the end, which is about Spike, and it takes you all the way to the end of it, there's all these wonderful little stories, single shot stories, maybe 2 episode stories like Jupiter Jazz, or you know, just Pierre LeFou, or one of my favorites, or you know, just so many little tiny scenes in each of these the Teddy Bomber guy. I mean, it's just so wonderful. I mean, there's a reason why Cowboy Bebop is such a wonderful anime. Is Netflix going to do it that way? Are they going to do it as an anthology? Are they just going to simply just take the stories out there and just make them live action? Are they going to create new anthology stories? Is it going to be even an anthology series? Or is it going to be a series that has a definite beginning, middle, and end with no anthology inside of it? Who knows? The other part of it that I'm really concerned about is one of the things that makes Cowboy Bebop such a classic is the music. You know I'm going to bring that up. Yoko Kanno. I don't know if she's involved with this. I haven't read anything thus far as far as filming now about that much about the music. It is so important to this show. If you're going to make it work, it has to be good. The music has to be good. It has to be a good soundtrack. You have to put effort into it. And that's why I worry about Netflix. Sometimes they don't really put the right amount of effort into things. Case in point, Altered Carbon, which was decent, but if you love that series of Cyberpunk, which I do, if you read the book and you see what they changed, which sometimes you have to do, you have to change things in order to make it make sense on screen, you're going to look at it and you're just going to go, oh, okay. There's stuff that I like, but yeah, okay. And I don't want that for Cowboy Bebop. I want it to be fantastic. So anyway, I'm going to stop it right there. One of the things I'm not going to talk about, unless it really comes up, is the issue of any whitewashing or anything like that. That's not something I normally talk about unless it's a big deal. For some reason, I don't think it's going to be a big deal for Cowboy Bebop. I think there's enough with this show that I think people are not going to worry about that. I could be wrong. I don't know. Anyway, that's my 2 cents thus far. I will certainly be coming back to this issue later on in future episodes. But in the meantime, my name is Steve Gerhardt. This is the Unagi Observer. Thank you for watching. If you'd like this video, please like it. If you would like to subscribe, please subscribe. I would love it if you subscribe. If I could give every single one of you a taco for subscribing, I would, but I can't. But just pretend I'm giving you a taco if you subscribe. Anyway, again, thank you so much for watching. It means a lot. And I'll see you guys next week.